shall I go from thy spirit? Whither shall I flee from thy presence? And the answer is nowhere. You can't go nowhere and hide from God because God is there. I just said God is everywhere at the same time. There's no hiding from God. Heaven is not too high for God. And hell is not too low. And in verse 8, because David went on and said in verse 8, he said, if I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. And if I make my bed in hell, you're there. And listen to this. The presence of God's glory is in heaven. The presence of his power is on earth. The presence of his justice is in hell. And the presence of his grace is with his people. That unmerited favor. We don't deserve it, but his grace. What you think? What is it that you think that brought you from the rocking of the cradle to this present time? What is it that you think that washed over you from the rocking of the cradle up into this present time? It was God's grace. There's no way you can ask for it. That's the God that we serve. They're unmerited grace. So there's no running or hiding from God. And if you want an example in the Bible, look at Jonah. God gave Jonah a commandment to go to Nineveh. First of all, Jonah didn't want to go. Second, he didn't want to go because he didn't want to preach to those people.
He had good reason. Go ahead, God.
He had a reason because he felt like they weren't going to hear him. But God didn't tell him to go and to see if the people would hear you. He just told him to go. But Jonah took it upon himself to go somewhere else. So he got him a ticket and he on to go aboard a ship to Joppa.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And then look what he did. Now he didn't stay up on deck. He went down below deck in the hull of the ship. Hiding from God. Thinking, fooling himself. Thinking he's hiding from God. And we know the story. We know what happened. That Jonah hiding from God, and the ship and the crew didn't know that Jonah was on board, and they was having all types of trouble on board the ship. They couldn't even set sail. In other words, they lost some valuable cargo because they had a Jonah on board. Because they had a Jonah on board. And let me point this out to you now. If there's trouble in the church, you may not know who it is, but it's simply because you got a Jonah on board. And if you are raising a lot of hell in somebody else's life, then you are a Jonah. So in that aspect, we have to do as Jonah did. When he recognized what was going on and that he came up out of the hull of the ship. It's the same with us that we have to if we call ourselves hiding in the hull of life, we need to come out of that hull of life. Come up on deck and humble yourself before God. Because we proclaim ourselves to follow Jesus. We say it all the time, we following Jesus. But yet and still, we don't want to own him. The first thing that you have to do in following Jesus, that is find him. And the way you do that, as he said, you must be born again. And then once you find him, you have to own him. And then I go back to what I said a few minutes ago about knowledge. After you own him, then you need to lift him up. And after lifting him up, then you need to learn about him. And then catch this. And after all of that, after finding him, owning him, lifting him up, learning about him, then you ought to obey him. And then after finding him, owning him, learning of him, lifting him up, obeying him, then you ought to want to work for him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Too many times we say we're following Jesus as an example, but we don't want to do no work. We don't want to do no work. And verse 9 says here, he said, if I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, then it says, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. So in other words, David was assured of the constant presence of God's hand of love and care, that not even death or the grave could separate him from God's love. And look at what Paul wrote in Romans 8:38 and 39. This is what Paul said. Paul said, he says, for I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature. Now, when he had enumerated all of these things, Paul says, nothing will separate me from the love of God. So this is what David was saying, that even though wherever he may go, he was assured that the presence of God's hand and love was with him. You can't escape God. And back to grace. Back to grace. God's grace. He told Paul that my grace will be sufficient for you. In verses 12 through 16, the omnipotence of God. Now, every person, all of us, we got a little power. We got a little bit. Just a little bit. We have a little authority. Just a little bit. But God has all power. That's who he is. And that's the God that we serve. So we see that we serve a God that sees everything, that hears everything, knows everything, and all presence everywhere at the same time. And God can do all things. All things. For Jesus said in Matthew 19 and 26, he said, with man it's impossible. But with God, all things are possible. Why won't we serve a God like this? Why won't we? Why won't we be obedient to a God like this? We'll be obedient to man. On our job, we'll be obedient to man. And here, this is something strange, it's something amazing, because I was in management with Walmart. It's something amazing. I used to tell my people all the time, y'all raise all this hell with me. Excuse me. Y'all, with me here on this job, you know, you're somewhat humble, so to speak, because you have something to lose. Because you know, if you get out of place, if you get out of the way, then I'm going to fire you. So you're careful. So, but why in the church? Why in the church that you raise all sorts of hell? Why do you do this? As if you don't have nothing to lose, and you have everything to lose. job. I'm not going to do that because I may get fired. But in the church, when you hear God's word, you won't be obedient to the pastor. You won't follow the pastor because you wouldn't tap in that agenda. We have a selfish attitude about it. And we are disobedient in the church. So why won't we serve a God like this? You know, I said that we have a little authority. We have a little power. And so serving God like this. And the reason we're not, because here we are. We're still mean. We're still selfish. And we're still low down. And let me say something. Let me say this now. Let me share this to some of you that are in leadership position. And some of you and with that little bit of authority, especially our elected officials. If you can't hold a meeting without fussing and fighting all the time, you're going to fail. There's no order there. If you got to hold a meeting and you're fussing and fighting all the time, you are doomed for failure. You're doomed for failure. And David closes this Psalm 23 and 24. He closes this and he asks God to search him. A very humble prayer. For he said in that 23rd verse, he says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my heart. Then in that 24th verse, he said, see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me into everlasting. Now look at this now. Look at this. Let's look at what Jeremiah says. We ask God to search our hearts. All right. Oh, my Lord. Because only God can search your heart. That's the inner part of it. Only God can search your heart. But look at what Jeremiah says. In Jeremiah 17, 9 and 10. In that 9th verse there, Jeremiah says this. He said, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? That's what he said. And then in the 10th verse he said, I, the Lord, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways and according to the fruit of his doing. And what he's saying in here is that the man's heart, innermost being, is bent a man's natural disposition apart from God's redeeming grace is described as deceitful, crooked, and desperately wicked, incurably sick. We say it all the time. No, we say it. I'm not going to do God. I can't do it. God knows my heart. You right. God knows it. So when you say it like that, God knows whether you're telling a lie or whether you just can't do it. But we say it all the time. So therefore he's saying that man cannot trust his own heart. But leave it all to God, who alone knows the heart and judges all men fairly. God knows your heart. You say it all the time, but know what you're saying. In the midst of that lie you're telling, God knows my heart. I tell people all the time, I tell people all the time, it takes money to run the church. It takes money to operate the church. There are expenses here. And when the pastor asks for something, if you can't do it, just keep your mouth shut. You don't have to go all that. God knows my heart. You don't have to do all that. Either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And here's the thing. And this is about the hard thing. Only a person with a redeemed heart can live in proper fellowship with God. Let's look at that now. Jesus went to the cross. He died for us. He redeemed us. You have the privilege to go to him. Go to his throne. You have the privilege to go to his throne and to go boldly. That boldly now, it does not mean that you go to God with your chest stuck out. It doesn't mean that you go to God like you a bag of chips and a Coke and all. That's what it means. It means that you have the privilege to go to God. Because Jesus Christ is sitting at the right hand of God as an intercessor before you. And you must humble yourself when you go to his throne. You must humble yourself before God. If you look at the stories of Israel and the children of Israel, how many times God told the children of Israel, no, your sacrifice don't mean nothing to me because it's just lip service. You think you're giving the sacrifice. Yeah, I'm giving the sacrifice. But God knows your heart is not right. So in other words, he don't want it. He can't use it. He told him to stop singing those songs because your heart is not right. So this is what it's saying. That's why what Jeremiah is saying about your heart. It's wicked. It's deceitful. And here's the thing. Now you ask God to search your heart. Now be careful. Be careful. You remember what I told you? Going to the throne. Be careful now. While you asking him to search you, while you put little effort to search yourself. Put little effort in it. And the reason why you put little effort in it, because you're not going to tell yourself the truth. You're not going to be honest with yourself. You're not going to scrutinize yourself. I know when I was at Walmart, there were many days that I left home and I looked myself in the mirror and I told Harry Horton, you could have done that better. You did not have to say the things that you said. You could have said it better. It's what he's saying, because if you humble yourself, if you're honest with yourself, you will be like Isaiah in Isaiah 6. When he said, in the year that Uzziah died, I also saw the Lord. Then he went on to say that, and when he got to the part, he says, woe unto me, for I'm unclean. And he took it a little bit further. He said, because I'm a man of unclean lips. And if you think that who you are, he said, I live among a people with unclean lips. It was only then that the servant took a live coal from the altar and touched his tongue and his sins were forgiven. It was only then when God asked the question who would go, Isaiah would say, here am I. When he humbled himself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He humbled himself.
Oh, yeah.
He was honest with himself. And then Isaiah in 64:6, this is what he said. He said, we are all as an unclean thing.
Yeah.
And all this, listen to this now, listen to me. Listen to what he says here. All of this righteousness that you think you have in you And you going to God in the presence of God with all of your so-called righteousness, you ain't nothing but a filthy right. Because you're not being honest with yourself. You're taking all of this mess to God. And you want him to listen to you. You want him to honor your request. When you did not humble yourself. Go to him. Even when you go into prayer. Before you petition the prayer for anybody, you need to ask the Lord to clean you up. Look at me, Lord. Look at my heart, Master. Because I'm doing this prayer for somebody else. I want this prayer to get through. So clean me up. Clean my heart up. That this prayer can get through. And then lastly, David said, he said, lead me in the way of everlasting. Our desire in life is the way to eternal life. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's going back to the part in the church, or you bringing all this hell in the church. When you ought to be seeking after eternal life. Because Jesus said in John 3:16, he says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. In other words, eternal life. You can't have eternal life without Jesus. If you think you can, see me. You can't have it without Jesus. And you have to go through Jesus. So when you go to prayer, especially when you go to prayer, ask God to clean you up. He'll do it. Because there's distractions in our mind. There's some distractions in our heart that will hinder your prayer. Take it from me. Trust me when I tell you, all of this mess in your heart, you going to God. That's a distraction. Your prayer's not going to get through. Because you're taking a lot of mess to God. Ask him to clean yourself up. You can't do it yourself. In John the 6th chapter. This is it now. This is it. In John the 6th chapter. In the 66th verse. It's going back to eternal life here. Where many of Jesus' disciples, they decided that at that point in time that they did not want to follow Jesus anymore. All right. So they went back to what they was doing. When we was in Sunday school this morning, we was talking about peer pressure. Talking about peer pressure and how we always pin it to teenagers. But contrary to popular opinion, old folks is under peer pressure. Old folks follow crowds. Get in the middle of the crowd and don't know what it's all about. But they'll get there. And it's been determined, and God determined this with Gideon and Judges, that there's danger in crowds. Following after the wrong people, you don't know what it's about anyway. As he told Gideon, he had 32,000. Gideon told him, you got too many. You got too many. And then in that 67th verse, he said, Jesus said unto the 12, and this is what he asked those 12 now. All his other disciples said, the left of the disciples, because the work got too hard. And for whatever reason, they said, I'm not going to follow Jesus anymore. So he asked the disciples, are y'all going to leave me too? And listen to what Peter said. It said, Peter answered him and said, Lord, if we leave you, where are we going? If we foolish enough to leave you, Jesus, where are we going? And in so many words, he said, I'm going to stay because your words hold eternal life. Peter was concerned about the after. What was going to happen? He was concerned. So I'm going to stay with the one that holds eternal life. So that's an invitation to you this morning. Jesus Christ holds eternal life. You're turning away from him, turning back to him. Because at this day and time, you never know, none of us know when your number will be called. There's a number that's going to be called that belongs to you, that your name is attached to, and you're going to have to answer. And that's Jesus Christ that holds eternal life. And I don't know about you this morning, but my focus is on eternal life. All of this nonsense that's going on in this world, all of this nonsense that's going on in this world, as divided as we are, I am focused on eternal life. I want somewhere to go. Somewhere to go. That's going to be better than this place when I leave here. Why would I want to live here in all of this hell, all of this mess, and then die and go to hell? Because God is there, and that's where the justice is. In hell. So my invitation to you this morning is hold on and seek after eternal life. Listen to David when he says, if you're asking God to search your heart, and you search it first, and you be honest with yourself, you know you're not no good. If you think you are, you're fooling yourself. Be honest with yourself. And this is a daily thing. You just can't do it today and then walk away from it. This is a daily thing. You have to ask God to clean yourself up. Because Jeremiah said the heart is deceitful. He didn't say it sometimes. He just blatantly said the heart is deceitful. There's a lot of mess there. And that's what he's saying. The door of the church is